don't identify as queer doesn't mean you can degrade and erase the existence of an entire demographic, including some white people, that has their home there.
All right, we have now for the first debate on queer culture. We move into our next micro debate. Obama was the gay president. Biden came
back in the 80s.
Biden came to the LGBT acceptance even faster than Obama. But it seems we can't agree on who embraces the LGBTQ community and who are really wolves in sheep's clothing. So our topic debate number 2. The White House says they are the most pro-LGBTQ in history. Doesn't Trump's approach to trans and Pence saying gay is a choice prove they are homophobic and transphobic? And we are going to begin with Gay Town Hall and begin with Taisha.
Hi again. So I just wanted to talk about the action of Trump and Pence. The HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, has an extensive list of anyone who is doing their due diligence and researching this information for themselves before they cast a vote. There is a list that depicts the amount of times that, when people the people across the aisles show up to the White House for their macaroni pictures, and their accolades, and then subsequently, later down the line, it always ends up that something is removed from the federal statutes that allow for the protection and safety of people that are under our LGBTQ umbrella. And I'm using Q, even though the other side would like it erased from the alphabet. So when we talk about opposition to, say, the Equality Act, as well as the removal of trans people from the military, as well as sexual assault language, as well as Title IX removal language, which is punished by removal of funding in schools. I don't think funding in schools removal is anywhere near appropriate, considering that there are so many disenfranchised children who struggle to even eat, let alone find an identity in their hallways where bullying runs rampant, not only in person and in line. I think that if the activists and the advocates were doing their job more, we would see more action taken on the legislative floor that is pro-LGBTQ than we see today.
All right, and then we move to hashtag Walkaway. Who's going to begin? 2 minutes.
Okay, so the trans military ban was brought up, and I think there is a lot of things people don't know about that supposed ban. And I want to be very clear that only people diagnosed with gender dysphoria are included in that ban. And as we know, some people who call themselves trans don't have that. And I would also say that the regulations and standards you have to meet to join the military are so insanely high. You can have a crooked pinky toe and they will not let you in. So I have yet to see anyone, since the existence of the trans ban, give a logical reason why gender dysphoria is something that is extremely debilitating, mentally debilitating, and often causes suicide, should pass the bar to be in the military. I don't think that's a good thing. I do, however, think that it's a bit too sweeping. I don't see a reason why they can't be cooks or coders, but in terms of the front lines, there was actually a Secretary of Defense memo sent to the President that spurred him barring trans people from the military, where it was actually an issue of efficiency, and trans people were compromising efficiency of missions. So it was actually at the request of the military to do this. It wasn't just Trump woke up one day and was like, you know what, I'm going to ban trans people. I've yet to hear an argument why people with gender dysphoria should be on the front lines. I mean, it's a harsh reality, but it's just the truth.
You have 1 uninterrupted minute.
Sure, Blair. I'm really glad that you're able to understand and make a distinction between trans and gender dysphoria. But when we say the trans ban, trans people were also banned. So, I mean, you would have been banned. And I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's right. Now, at the same time, they said the same thing about black people before they allowed black people into the military, right? So these are things that over history we learn, and over history we need to adjust and change to. And the fact that the general said that it was not important to do the ban speaks loud to that. Actions and words matter. Trump never speaks about us, but he does act about us. The Equality Act, because of paternal and conscious rights, Lambda Legal said 39% of its judges, and the American Bar Association said they are not qualified because they are anti-LGBTQ. The Department of Justice, of course, discrimination trans. And one last point, after...
Thank you. And
There's a
now
big
we're going
difference
to
between
move
black and
to
trans.
hashtag Walkaway. You have
So, first of all, I just want to say I cannot enlist in the military. I'm banned. Now, people on the left will tell you that's because I'm gay. Oh, wait, no, it's because I have rods in my back, so I'm not fit. Now, you guys mentioned what Mike Pence said in the 90s. So if you want to go back to the 90s, let's look at what happened in the 90s. I remember it very well. That was when Joe Biden voted for supporting the federal ban on gay marriage, gay people serving in the military. It's also when he called gay people a threat to national security. Has done many things. He has signed an initiative giving HIV prevention drugs for free to people without insurance. An initiative to where they have homosexuality overseas, to get rid of the criminalization of it. And you mentioned that groups like HRC, they told us that when he appointed Neil Gorsuch, it would be at the end of gay rights. And Gorsuch just a few weeks ago voted to criminalize workplace discrimination for LGBT.
back to Dave on Paul. Final comments from Darrell. 30 uninterrupted seconds.
Well, we have 5 brilliant policy wonks and me. So I'm going to stay in my lane and talk about just religion for a moment. Because I don't know what every person on the right feels about LGBTQ issues, but I know what Franklin Graham and Jerry Falwell Jr. and Robert Jeffress feel about LGBTQ people. They're very vocal about it, they're very hateful about us, and those are the religious voices that this administration has embraced, and that's what concerns me.
30 uninterrupted seconds.
Taisha, I'm glad that you brought up HRC again, because again, I want to mention that the executive director of the Human Rights Campaign is making over $500,000 salary by telling gay people that they're oppressed, and by keeping the notion of oppression going on and on and on, even when it doesn't exist. But I do want to speak to you, Ty, about the trans ban, so-called trans ban. There are people who take nearly identical therapies as trans people do, like people with low testosterone, people with early menopause who have to take hormone therapy. They're not allowed in the military. So giving transgender people the right to be in the military when they're taking the exact same treatments as other people is special rights for transgender people.
I didn't hear a clear answer from either side, so I'm going to exercise my privilege of asking a follow-up question. This will be the first follow-up question in the debate, and each side will have 1 minute. You will decide one person that will answer my question. Everybody understands? Since we began with Gay Town Hall, we will begin with you as the first to answer this question. The claim is that President Trump is the most pro-LGBTQ president in history. Is he or is he not? And you have 1 minute.
So, even though we're talking a lot about trans and military ban, and yes, menopause also does exist, and cisgender women who also goes through menopause while in the military, I also want to speak to the fact that they removed emergency protections for transgender people to make homeless people have shelter when in need, and that has nothing to do with joining the military. So, if we're going to talk and go down to basic human rights, what we are asking for as people under the trans umbrella is food and a roof over our head, just like any American who wants that too.
So go to work.
Okay, now we're going to turn to hashtag Walkaway.
Then go to work, right?
Okay, the question is very
Sorry.
clear. President Trump is the most pro-LGBTQ president in history because.
Yeah, I've written several articles with that exact title. So Trump is the first president to go into office supporting gay marriage. Not Obama, Trump. Trump launched a global campaign to decriminalize homosexuality across the globe. Let's say that to the UN, first president to ever do that. He secured a historic donation of free HIV medication for over 200,000 people, invested $716 million towards fighting the virus, pledged to cure the LGBT community having to deal with this virus, and every year he's been in office, funding has increased. So, you know, I also have to say that I don't want to get caught up in trying to convince each side who's more pro, Biden or Trump, because at the end of the day, both sides have their problems with LGBT issues. What I would like to say is things are very much changing on the right, and people like us are changing it from the inside, which I think is very important. And objectively, on a pure number to number basis, there are more pro-LGBT things on the Trump side than Biden.
That ends the micro debate on support of the LGBT community. We're going to move into micro debate number 3, debate topic 3, the Equality Act. The House has passed it. Senate Majority Leader McConnell won't even acknowledge it. But America has become much better for LGBT rights, and perhaps we don't even need to acknowledge it. But Americans have become much better for LGBT rights, and the passage of Equality Act may not be necessary in 2020. The LGBTQ community has not lost any rights, topic question, under Trump, and therefore, do we need the Equality Act? And we're going to start with #Walkaway, who is the first speaker. Brandon, and you have 2 uninterrupted minutes.
Sure. Well, I think that in order to really dive into this topic, we have to really, as a community, if we even are that anymore, and I very much disagree that we are, we have to come to terms with what we are actually calling gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. Because in today's day and age, it seems that a man can put on a dress and call himself trans. And so, if we're going to sit around and accept now that this is a viable definition of LGBT, then I think it's completely unfair to expect employers in this country to have employees who tell them on a daily basis, these are my pronouns, these are the special words that you have to use when you address me. This is the way that I'm allowed to compel your speech, even though you're my employer. That I'm allowed to use whichever restroom I want, and sometimes my gender changes. Some days I'm male, some days I'm female. Sometimes it changes throughout the day. This is absurdity. It has nothing to do with being LGBT. And there's a reason why these gender identity radicals didn't exist before 2015. Because again, it's an extension of the oppression industry. And so until the day comes that we as a community can sit down and really figure out what actually is LGBT anymore, I don't think we should be expecting other people to comply with what we're expecting them to do in the workplace.
Is the Equality Act necessary?
Right, so Brandon said they do have to sit down and figure it out. However, they've had since 1964 to sit down and figure it out and pass a bill, and I have not seen that from them. So when we want to talk about the Equality Act, we have to go back to 1964, to the Civil Rights Act, of which the reason why the Equality Act wanted to come into existence is one of the things that he did not talk about, which is to include marital status. And I know that the LGBTQ community celebrated the support of gay marriage. However, that is still not, as of right now, in an act as of right now. So when we talk about since 1974, and the subsequent years, like the 114th conference, so 2015 and 2017, the Democrats have repeatedly tried to work with those across the table to bring about a bill that would, even a compromising bill, that would support things like housing, rental, financial, sex, sexual orientation, marital status for everyone regardless of if you're LGBTQ. And that is not something that we pack. So if you're wanting to sit down and learn what LGBTQ is, then also you should have spent that last 3 decades figuring out how to work with Democrats who have repeatedly voted for and tried to bring bills to the table and made your voice known then.
All right, and we move to Walkaway, who's going to be next for one uninterrupted minute. Thank you.
Okay, so if the Equality Act was as simple as telling employers, hi, you can't fire people just because they're gay or trans, I'd be all for it. I think that's completely, acceptable. However, it includes a lot more than that. It's very long. It includes forcing biological males to compete in women's sports, which has a lot of issues with that. We can go into that if we need to. It includes compelled speech with pronouns. And there's already a lot of stuff that's gone on because of these types of laws. Look at the cake baker. I forget which state he was from. I apologize. But that man thankfully won his case, but then another transgender person came after the gay person to harass him again. There's a precedent that's being set, and I don't feel comfortable with the Equality Act as it's written. I'm just going to say that.
All right, and we are going to move to daytime hall and then one uninterrupted minute. Jarrell.
You know, I don't know that that there will be an Equality Act. We still don't have the ERA, so I don't know. My crystal ball is on the fritz. But I do know that we will achieve our goals. It may be through community efforts, it may be through business, it may be through government, it may be through the courts. I mean, one way or another, we always seem to eventually, it takes way too long, we eventually get to what's right. So it's going to happen eventually, somehow. But I also know that if you've ever had your humanity or dignity decided by a vote or a court ruling, you're a target, and targeted people need protection.
Into hashtag Walkaway and 30 uninterrupted seconds.
Yes, I will be there for Angry Vikings in Lakeland. I'm bringing my boyfriend, and it's going to be amazing. Yes, I will be there.
Reflective of at least the reality I live in. Also, you're talking about the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I would like to point out that in the year 2000, Donald Trump was on the record supporting adding sexual orientation to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The Equality Act has so many problems that Blair mentioned. There are a lot of concerns about religious freedom because tolerance has to be a two-way street. And we've seen in foreign countries what's already been happening with comedians going on trial for jokes, Bill C-16 in Canada, and and censorship. And the LGBT community is so much on the forefront of censorship today. That's the last thing I think we need is to give them the federal government behind them.
Thank you.
Whoa! Hey now! Go ahead, Mikey.
We are watching live in the Sunshine Cathedral, the largest queer church in the world here in Fort Lauderdale, Lone Manors, Florida, the historic National LGBTQ Vote 2020 debate, sponsored by the Happening Now television network. That was micro mini debate number 3 about the Equality Act. It moves us on to start.
I didn't get my 30 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed.
He does this shit to me all
Reclaiming my
the
time.
We will finish with Dr. Ty Hauser.
Apparently you can cuss in this church, too. Let's see what else, wonder what else happens here.
You don't feel like you're a target, and that is certainly speaking to a privilege that you have that not many of my students have, right? Because my students come to me with a much different story. And if you want to talk about the 1965 Non-Discrimination Act, when Trump tried to have it overturned and the Supreme Court said no, he sat on the toilet and he tweeted, "The Supreme Court doesn't like me."
All right, back now.
This is what they do when they have no argument.
The Equality Act. We're going to move on to our debate and topic 4. The next 4 years, and perhaps generations to come, are going to face the balance of court decisions on religious freedom versus LGBTQ civil rights. How will it be decided, and why is one more important than the other? Should a business, which is our debate topic, should a business be forced to decorate a wedding cake, as in the Masterpiece Cake Shop Supreme Court case? We're going to begin on with Gay Town Hall, and our first speaker is Darrell.
Wow, my passion about cakes is not at the level I wish it were right now. It is wrong, of course, if you are in business to serve the public, to deny public because you don't like them. I'm pretty well versed in religion, and I don't know any religion that prohibits you doing business with people. If people don't want to celebrate other people's marriages, they shouldn't be forced to do that. They shouldn't have to go to your wedding. They shouldn't perform your wedding. But cake is cake. So I don't know. I'm not as passionate about that as I want to be. But I am passionate about religious freedom not being used as religious tyranny. That just because I'm free to worship how I want to call God what I want to pray how I want, I'm even free to preach against other people. I think that's a bad policy, but I'm free to do it. I'm not free, though, then to legislate my prejudices against people. The state should treat everyone equally. Yes, my religion can say all those other religions are going to hell, they're wrong, they're bad, but I shouldn't have influence over the state to make the state do that dirty work for me. So, yes, religious freedom, I benefit from it, I'm all for it. But religious freedom should never become religious tyranny over the people you just don't happen to like or agree with.
2 minutes.
I think the crux of this issue is really the difference between a custom service and something where it doesn't matter, because of course, if somebody is bagging your groceries, what difference does it make if you're gay? Nobody supports that sort of discrimination. There's a big difference between a custom service, which is what the Masterpiece Cake Shop was really about. And everything here really just comes down to individual autonomy. Tolerance has to be a two-way street. I mean, I don't think that black wedding planners should be forced to plan a wedding for Klansmen. And yeah, we can all make those decisions. People say, why is it a big deal for a business to support gay? But why would you want to give business to somebody who isn't down with that? I would just go to another bakery. And the implications of how else this can be applied. You know, Taicha, I don't think any of you guys would want to be forced to bake a Maga cake, so.
Well, as it would work out now for one uninterrupted minute, Taisha gets to reply to that.
So I don't know how to bake. I know how to arm and disarm doors, so I don't want to bake a cake. However, if we are going to talk about customer service, I'm sure the black people that were sitting at the counter in that Compton cafeteria would disagree with what you statement said concerning customer service.
That wasn't a customer
They were
service.
asking for a customer service, and you know, this is just us repeating history and not remembering what history has taught us when it comes to separate but equal. We are asking for equity and equality, and that includes not repeating our past like we did when we asked black and colored people to use separate fountains and separate doorways in order to get.
This is why Brandon needs to have me on that stage. I would roast that bitch. I would roast that bitch. I'm ready to snatch her wig off right now. She's making people look stupid. She's making herself look stupid.
Someone who dislikes me making food for me. And you know, there was this, I forget who mentioned just now, but religious tyranny and religious people going out of their way to oppress perhaps the LGBT community. And while I'm wholeheartedly against that, and I grew up in a town where that was almost more common, I think we're starting to see a different trend, which is equally disastrous. I mentioned before the baker who was forced to bake the gay cake. I mean, court was already settled on that, that's already over. But then after that, like I said, a trans person went and tried to harass and do the same thing. So religious tyranny, bad. LGBT tyranny, bad. And I just, you know, I'm just agreeing with what Mike said, that it has to be a two-way street, and this country was founded on religious liberties, and I would never want to compromise that.
To religion versus LGBT rights, 30 seconds, time.
Thank you so much, Al. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna cross over here a little bit and say I think I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying. I wouldn't ask someone who is anti-LGBTQ to make me a cake, and I don't imagine why you would want to. However, we have decided for some reason in this country that corporations and businesses are people, right? The Supreme Court said this. So if corporations and businesses are people, then we need to be treated like people by other people. And that's really all I have to say.
And final argument in the debate, Brandon.
Yes, so again, the point needs to be repeated that we're talking about a customized service here. If a gay couple went into that same bakery and wanted to buy any other cake, which wasn't a customized wedding cake, they would have been served just like anybody else. Your comparison, Taisha, is completely not apt. Because what you're talking about is black people being denied service based off of the fact that they're black. That's not what happened here. This person went into a religious cake baker's store. I only have 30 seconds, guys. This guy went into this couple went into a religious cake baker's store and said, I want you to bake me a cake for a gay couple. I want a customized gay wedding cake. They could have bought any other cake on the shelves, and like Mikey said, let's let the free markets decide. Go get your cake somewhere else, and if people decide they don't want to support it, they won't get your cake, you won't, it's not going to work out.
The gay cake's going to be better anyway.
Our mini debate 4, and for mini debate 5, we're going to stay on the Supreme Court for a moment. In 2015, the most significant LGBTQ moment since Stonewall occurred in a 5-4 decision for gay marriage. LGBTQ America thought the issue was resolved. We now learn in Thomas and Alito's warning in the last weeks that they possibly want to revisit the issue, that the court could change everything back. So we ask in our mini debate topic, what is at stake at the Supreme Court for the LGBTQ community? And we're going to start with hashtag Walkaway. Who's first? 2 minutes.
I'll go first. I would have loved to have just taken the extra second to pull up the actual quote that those two justices said, so I'm going to have to paraphrase instead, because that's a complete misrepresentation of what actually happened. What Justice Alito said, and Justice, help me,
Thomas.
Thank you, said, was that they didn't believe that this is something that should have been decided in the courts, and they would have liked to have seen the democratic process decide this issue for everybody. They had the decision to see if they wanted to continue the case with Kim Davis. They said no. They felt that the court had made the right decision. So all they did was express that they felt that the Supreme Court had overreached what their actual purpose was in deciding this for everybody else. They did not say that gay marriage was wrong. They did not say that they wanted to repeal gay marriage. They didn't say that they hope that the case comes back to court so they can roll things back. They simply said that they didn't feel that it was proper for the court to make the decision at that time. Now, I happen to disagree with them. I think that marriage equality should be the law of the land. I'm glad the Supreme Court decided it, and I'm glad that we have equality. But that is their opinion, and that is not the same thing as them wanting to roll back gay marriage or indicating or signaling that that's what they plan to do.
For the town hall, we'll start with Darrell. 2 minutes.
When the Supreme Court ruled that weekend on a Friday that marriage equality was the law of the land, the next day, my husband and I were married in this room. We'd already planned it. It wasn't thrown together. It just happened to work out that way. And it was a very meaningful moment. Our families were here. So this is something I really have skin in the game on. We met in seminary. He was just ending a 10-year stint in the U.S. Navy. We met. He came in from a run. And, when you see a running sailor, I mean, something happens to a gay guy. So, and we met in seminary, and we've been together for 20 years, and now legally married for 5. So this is a very, very important issue to me. It's too important to me to try to parse intentions. I don't know if anyone on the Supreme Court wants to undo that historic and wonderful thing, but I know there are a lot of people in this country that are willing to use their time and resources and voices to try to persuade them and or Congress to undo it. And that is what I'm very aware of and very afraid of. That people who talk a lot sometimes about family values aren't always interested in valuing my family.
And we're going to walk away, and who's going to say? Okay.
That's a beautiful story, Reverend, but I didn't hear an answer after Brandon destroyed this talking point that Clarence Thomas and Alito want to undo gay marriage. So it's clearly not true. You know, I'd also like to point out that every single case
Mikey is
from the
savage.
Supreme Court, every single case involving gay rights, the swing vote deciding for it has been a Republican. And, yeah, that's it was Joe Biden. Like I said, also, let's not forget, it was Joe Biden who voted for all of these things, voted to ban gay marriage, voted to ban people in the military. And it's amazing how they evolve the moment that polling evolves.
Dang. Get it, Mikey.
Taisha, sorry.
Who also sometimes goes by Ty, so that's probably why I keep making this mistake. So yeah, I definitely agree. It is accurate that the swing vote has decided a lot of laws that have helped LGBTQ. However, I would like to side with consistency, and the majority votes that have ruled in favor of us have been Democratic. I would not want to bet the farm on a statistic that maybe today a Republican person or someone who is conservative is going to rule in favor of my human rights. So it is also true what Brandon said about the quote, however, actions speak louder than words, and if your history and portfolio shows you supporting entities, corporations, and nonprofits that are anti-LGBTQ and anti-marriage, that speaks more than a tweet.
I would like to say that it's very important to avoid fear-mongering towards the LGBT community. What I've seen the entirety of the Trump administration has been talking point after talking point after talking point about how our rights are being stripped away, trying to scare us into always voting Democrat, and I do not like that. There really is not.
Get it, Blair.
I thought I didn't have much to add to what Brandon said because he hit it on the nail, but I also will say that even if, and we're talking hypothetically because again, there's no rational reason to believe it's about to be overturned, even if it were to be turned over to a vote for the states and for the people, I think pretty much everyone would be in favor of gay marriage. It's hard to find two people to even debate this topic anymore. Everyone is okay with it.
Thank you.
Yep. Nobody cares anymore. Nobody cares anymore. They keep kicking a dead
So,
horse.
Brenda, I will address your comment on language. There is nothing that gets my nipples harder than legalese and philosophy. I do agree with you on exactly what they said. That is what they said. The problem with what they said is that if we put it into states' rights, or if it leaves the Supreme Court, then what we're up against is a left and a right. And the right, definitely at their core and at their base, wants to overturn it. It's part of their
No.
in the platform. Overturn.
Oh, it's not Trump's platform, it's Mitt Romney's platform.
We have a
Ooh! Mikey's the shit. Ooh.
We're going to move and continue to LGBT Vote 2020 issue, and it's about health care. LGBTQ health care is one of the greatest challenges for our community.
Oh God,
The
who
Supreme
cares?
Court may doom a